So maybe a little over a year ago, I'm riding alone for some reason for long enough, and I'm listening to this Spotify mix of some songs that are like some of my favorite rap songs to play on some particular playlist. And for those who don't know, Spotify runs on a predictive algorithm. So after all of the songs in a playlist are played, it creates a brand new playlist based solely on what it thinks you'll like based on your previous songs that you're listening to. This playlist in particular for me is called Hip Hop Old and New. And it features some of my all-time favorite real hip-hop tracks. So we're talking like Tribe Called Quest, Slum Village, Common. And then it also features newer people that I like, such as Kendrick, J. Cole, Saba, No Name, etc. And once it got to the end of the playlist, it played some familiar stuff that I'd heard before and liked. But then it got to a new track and I was immediately like, oh yeah, this is definitely going into the rotation. It was this unfamiliar voice though. It was this deep, raspy, unmistakably New York style of flow over this undeniably New York sounding beat. It made me feel like I was hearing Mobb Deep or something way back in like 96. Initially, I thought this is probably some new Griselda person that I hadn't heard of before, or maybe one of these underground rappers that, you know, the babies be telling me about on Twitter that I hadn't bothered to check out yet, because I'm sorry, I don't be listening to new music like that, y'all. I just don't have the time. Turns out I was mostly right. It was definitely a new New York MC, and the 90s, early 2000s influence was there because the track was actually produced by Havoc of Mobb Deep fame. But it wasn't anyone from Griselda or any of the 90s New York style cast that had popped up in previous years, like a Joey Badass or a Mock Hami. The name was completely new to me, which was fine, because like, again, I'm listening to music like that. I'm not Anthony Fantano. I don't know who half of these people are until y'all yell them at me enough for me to listen, right? But I was not imagining seeing this when I looked the artist up.
Y'all fuck with that grimy hip-hop shit out here in LA? He turned as fuck, I see him. New York ain't dead. It came back to life in the apocalypse. I done seen too much by 14 to be an optimist. Round late registrations dropped. I learned about consequence. Before shit mellowed out, I saw a few Marty Collinses.
Yeah, what the fuck? The fuck? This is Marlon Craft. And over the last year or so, he's become one of my favorite new rappers and has been in heavy rotation a little bit. Craft seems to be doing well with several songs with millions of streams, but I have to say, I'm a bit shocked that I hadn't heard about him before he popped up on my Spotify. He doesn't have a large presence or buzz in the online hip hop circles that seem to buzz around my head on a regular basis ever since I've been on YouTube. Which is odd because he sounds like someone I should have heard before, because he sounds like one of these 90s Renaissance rap artists out of the East Coast that have been, you know, having their own little wave and moment for the last 5 or 6 years. And he's white. Very clearly white. Not like spicy white like Yeet or Logic, like white. Raisins and potato salad white. And that just blows me because generally speaking, any white rapper who is halfway decent will get an outsized amount of attention. For example, at the same time that I was discovering Marlon Craft, another white rapper seemed to be pretty much everywhere I turned. For most of 2022, Jack Harlow was inescapable. He was on at least 2 top hits that I feel like happened last year. There was countless discourse about him online. He won a BET award, made a movie, hosted a college football show, and then quickly laid an egg with his subsequent major release before then disappearing to regroup and figure out what the fuck went wrong. It was an immense musical anticlimax that I think a lot of people saw coming, but more and more people were happy to see happen. Something about Harlow's rise to fame rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. It was a bit of a paradox though, because while Harlow had so much fanfare and hype as well as hate, his actual music was just mid. It was like perfectly in the middle and disposable, which is probably why he didn't go anywhere, but it didn't make sense that he had so much hype and hate in the first place. I remember so many people telling me to make a video about him, and I'm like, why? I eventually did make a B-sides video, and the video was basically like, And this is because hip hop has always had a very large mid-tier full of guys who you remember a few songs of, and they have their diehard fans, right? But they'll never move the needle on the culture and will barely be remembered 10 years from now. And Harlow really fits into that, except for the fact that he's white. In a weird paradoxical way, Harlow's whiteness was both amplifying him to a level of stardom that his talent was not worthy of, but also, as a result of this, amplifying scrutiny and criticism that should be reserved for more offensively bad or problematic or at least interesting artists, like, say, a Kanye West, Doja Cat, Lauryn Hill. Like, those are figures whose work and lives and careers are worthy of discussing at a high level, even if you don't like them or their music. And that's not the same as Jack Harlow. I would never, that would be like me doing a video about Chia Lee or Nappy Roots, Killer Army. You kind of see? Yes, those are all real rappers from my era. Y'all gonna do a lot of Googling. If you are under the age of like 35, just go ahead, open Google up in another window so you can see all the jewels I'm about to drop on shit some of y'all have never heard of. I would rather tell you about Marlon Craft, who's a much better artist, but even then, I feel the urge to tread lightly. Cause although I genuinely like Marlon Craft's music, he's still white. Again, real white. And just as with Jack Harlow, there's this complex and difficult to describe thing with white rappers. And if you think about it, white people in general in the arts, like, I realize that people don't want me to talk about Jack Harlow as much as they want help processing this weird relationship between him and hip hop, this explicitly Black American art form that has defined pop culture for nearly half a century now, and whiteness and white people, that vampiric relationship that they have with Black art and culture, despite having contributed a lot to hip hop. Like, some of you want me to validate that you, as a white fan of hip hop, or maybe even an aspiring hip hop artist, that you can indulge in the art form without guilt or trepidation. And but on the flip side, I know some of you just want me to drag and roast the likes of Jack Harlow, Lil Dicky, Tom McDonald, Post Malone, and show them as examples of why hip hop needs to be clearly gatekept from white folks altogether. And if you know me, you already know I'm not gonna perfectly satisfy your deepest desire on this topic. But at the end of the video, I think you'll understand why there's a tender, squishy, what am I doing? What am I doing? What I'm getting at is, I think by the end of this video, I'm gonna make both of these crowds very sad, but also very happy, I hope. And I'm going to do that by addressing what I call the white rapper paradox. And the only way to do that easily is to talk about the most successful white rapper of all time, and probably one of the most misunderstood.
That's an awfully hot coffee pot.
Eminem, and his complex and profound career as hip-hop reject, into niche rap darling, to biggest musician in the world, to falling star, and now kind of back to niche darling again. Eminem's career and his contributions, both good and bad, tell us everything we need to know to understand why white rappers are both a problem for the art form, but also bring a lot to the table at the same time that, I don't know about y'all, but like, when I get into it, y'all not gonna want to give up some of the shit I bring up here, you know, just to keep Tom McDonald out. We gotta do some work to set the stage first. So let's do our, typical history lesson here. Historically, white people have always loved Black art, and that makes sense because Black art and its music are top tier. You don't have to do a lot of work to look into so much of art history to see how Black art and African art clears everything on a regular basis, or how white and European people have often been influenced by it, whether it be the influence of African art on Pablo Picasso or the outright theft of Black rock and roll by Elvis Pressley. Now, all art builds upon previous art, and nothing is new under the sun. But historically, with Black art, it's not just a matter of being borrowed from and stolen from. It's a matter of receiving any credit or reward for the creation in the first place. Like, later in his life, Picasso denied being influenced by traditional African art. And while Elvis did, thankfully at times, try to credit his success and work with the Black influential rock and roll figures that gave him his start, it kind of didn't matter what he did. did. Him being white and mastering this black art form for a white audience overshadowed any efforts to bring shine to those black folks that influenced him. Remember this for later is going to become kind of important. But the love of black art isn't just a product of black art being so great though. Everyone has dope art in their culture and history. Even the variety of European cultures that made up various immigrant groups in America had dope cultural aesthetics and art that they came to America with, or at least they did before they became white. See, the first thing we're gonna have to talk about is the concept of white as a universal category to even put in front of rapper. There are Americans alive today that are older than the universal acceptance of white as a genuine ethnicity and not just a category that black people didn't belong to. When the first colonizers arrived in America, they weren't white, they were Spanish or Portuguese or British or French, etc. But when they had to figure out a reason to justify taking the land of Native Americans or the need to enslave stolen Africans, these various European ethnicities and nationalities developed the concept of whiteness as a core feature to unite and empower them as a race against the others that did not look like them because of their darker skin. And they just so happened to want to kill, take the land, and enslave these people. Convenient that they would make them into something that was inhuman in the process. This practice has a long history. Like I'm incredibly flattening and simplifying some stuff, but the end result over time of enough of that activity was this bleaching and flattening process of tons of unique cultures into one bland American aesthetic. And when you consider that the first true American settlers were Puritans and Pilgrims, folks not necessarily known for vibrant expressive art, it's understandable that the bar for white art was in hell. And the same fate occurred for later immigrants that were Italian and German and Irish that came later. They came with Italian, German, and Irish culture, and over time, all that shit gets stripped out and they become just regular white people, except the Irish. The Irish, they all be trying. The Italians too, a little bit, The Germans, not so much. Ain't nobody going out to get German food. What is German food? Conversely, under the constraints of oppression, enslaved Africans carried on bits and pieces of traditions pulled directly from Africa, stripped of their original elements, but not their core essence, and that carried from that slave experience to now. The origins of soul music and the blues were crafted in the slave fields. The vibrance of black dance and movement spilled out from slaves in the black church, the only place where they had enough privacy to dance and express joy. All of this has manifested directly into a lot of what hip hop and black art and song and dance and storytelling is today. Black Marxist philosopher Frantz Fanon wrote about this type of art under colonialism.
Another aspect of the colonizer affectivity can be seen when it is drained of energy by the ecstasy of dance. Any study of the colonial world, therefore, must include an understanding of the phenomena of dance and possession. The colonized way of relaxing is precisely this muscular orgy during which most of the brutal aggressiveness and impulsive violence are channeled, transformed, and spirited away. Everything is permitted. For in fact, the sole purpose of the gathering is to let the supercharged libido and stifled aggressiveness spew out volcanically. Symbolic killing, figurative cavalcades, and imagined multiple murders. Everything has to come out. The ill humors seep out, tumultuous as lava flows.
It's wild that Fanon wrote this so long ago, yet you can easily imagine that these words could describe the unbridled aggression, intensity, and raunch that hip-hop music presented to us since the late 70s. Hip-hop is an art form explicitly informed by the oppressed condition of black people, but also very much informed by those African aesthetics and traditions that have never really left us. So it's pretty clear why our art, even today, but also back then, it just hit different, right? Let's keep it a buck. White Americans struggle to have the same background factors to drive their art. The very essence of whiteness and the white experience is designed to avoid and pull out those types of conditions that make black art possible. And it's telling that the elements of white art and music that do stem from similar conditions of poverty and strife and struggle, your Johnny Cash, your Springsteen.
Got a real hometown jam. Son, put a rifle in my hand. Send me off to a foreign land.
metal, all of those genres of white-oriented music that existed for years in white culture, you notice they've all faded into the background in favor of rap over the last few decades. Like, there's not going to be any Super Bowl halftime shows, probably for the ever going forward, that will feature a white musician playing rock music. It may never happen again. And this is because, as has been the case pretty much from jump, whiteness has needed to consume, control, and embody blackness in black art. So as hip hop emerges as this new thing, much like black rock and roll before it and black jazz before that, white consumers seek to fill that void of nothingness that whiteness creates with the vibrance of hip hop. And over time, just as with rock and roll and jazz, these white youth fall in love with the art and want to make their own. And eventually we get the white rapper. Black people often love to see white people perform our shit. It's you see this paradox situation we're talking about, right? There's always been this heightened sense of being impressed when a white person is able to perform anything that is culturally or aesthetically tied to blackness. It's kind of an unholy combination of white privilege and the fact that black people in America have been psychologically conditioned to see the best in white people reflexively. But that wasn't the case for white rappers, though. I think because hip hop was so explicitly built off the image of black males, swapping out white males just didn't work. Bobby Caldwell could find the right groove and talk about love, and Dusty Springfield could sing about a preacher man, but Snow rapping about snitching over a reggae beat, that just didn't work. Which is ironic because Snow actually did time in prison. He was legit like trying to talk to somebody with that song. But he was also a Canadian Irishman doing reggae music, which sounds like something from an Eric Andre skit.
Imposter, I'm just a middle-class worker from Toronto. In spite of how I sound, single one platinum bigger than Marley and Jimmy and Yellowman, but I'm not even mulatto. My reggae's watered down.
And yeah, it just didn't work, and it really wouldn't work for a while. Before Eminem, there was a mixture of genuine and earnest attempts by white artists to perform the art form, as well as absolute buffoonery and ridiculousness in either the form of low-key, offensive novelty acts or soulless commercial cash grabs. Hip-hop starts in the late 70s out of disco culture, but there's not too many white rappers to appear until the late 80s. And this is because it wasn't until really that time that hip-hop began being seen as a commercially viable genre, where record labels and the radio saw reason to invest and develop hip-hop as a genre for commercial gain. Up until that point, most of mainstream America saw hip-hop as a joke or a passing fad. Thus, as far as I could tell doing research, the first ever white person to rap on a commercial track is this skinny white girl from Blondie talking about Fab Five Freddy and dancing like someone's drunk mom at an office party.
Fab Five Freddy told me everybody's fine. DJ's spinning a set of my mind. Flashy stacks, flashy scoop.
And after her, the next white person to rap is fucking Rodney Dangerfield, beginning what would actually be a long tradition of random white celebrities making rap songs for no discernible reason.
Friends don't call, my phone don't ring. I don't get a break with anything.
What's the matter, Rodney?
Ah, death, where is my sting?
It's just rapping Rodney.
In 1986, we get the Beastie Boys, founded by fellow white hip-hop legend Rick Rubin. Their early success came greatly as a novelty, hey, we're white guys that rap type of gimmick. They were the first frat boy rappers probably, but they impressively quickly abandoned the gimmick and graduated to be one of the most eclectic and musically challenging groups of their era in any genre. Along with the Beastie Boys in that early era, we have Third Base. While not nearly as impactful as the Beastie Boys, their biggest hit, The Gas Face, still gets the party going at any old school hip hop set and marks probably the most prominent first appearance of one Zev Love X, who would fade into obscurity early in his career and then reemerge later as the legendary MF Doom. This is another thing that you're going to see a lot throughout this video is that randomly, like, some of our biggest black hip hop stars of all time would pop up, you know, next to a white guy saying, hey, I'm here too. And then all of a sudden it's like, shit, this is MF Doom's first appearance. MC Search, one of the rappers from Third Base, actually did it twice because he also discovered Nas from under Cool G Rap's nose and actually owns the rights to his music or something, which is fucked up, but the whole industry's fucked up and I don't really want to get into that shit. There's the unfortunately named Milkbone. Milkbone made one of my favorite rap songs of the 90s, and I forgot. Milkbone, like most rappers from the 90s, like had that Big Daddy Kane Cool G rap flow that Nas had mastered and taken to another level. And so this one song, Keep It Real, sounds like a Nas B-side. It even has AZ as a sample for the hook.
Keep it real.
We were beginners in the hood, and my mentality is keeping it real, back and still getting high.
Keep it real.
And the shit still goes hard though, but like he was never seen again. So I remember looking through Nas's whole musical catalog, looking for this song literally for decades until I rediscovered Milkbone probably like a couple of years ago. So what else we got in the 90s? We got a lot of groups. We got House of Pain. They were Irish, and then like the lead singer started doing the blues. Again, that transition thing going on. We had the Young Black Teenagers. I memory vaulted these motherfuckers because until searching for this video, I had forgot these motherfuckers existed, but once I saw them, I was like, oh, I remember these dudes. They were advocating for a post-racial society and speaking on the struggle of being white in a black art form, and nobody was on board with this, but they tried. You can tell.
For example, let's look at this jam on the album that I wrote called Daddy Called Me. I like the sublime history, you know what I'm saying? They look at us as a white group, you know what I'm saying? And they use the word daddy call me. And it doesn't just go for my father being Caucasian calling me a because I'm into a street culture. I have a lot of brothers that I roll with since I was young, that just because they're in the same culture and the same state of mind that I am, their father calls them of today. The youth of hip-hop today are young black teenagers. See what I'm saying? It has nothing to do with a skin color. It's a race without a color.
In the late 90s, right around where we're getting Eminem's emergence, we also get a lot of rock rap in the form of Limp Bizkit, Insane Clown Posse, Rage Against the Machine, a little bit of Anthrax, who collab with Public Enemy. People cringe at this now, but this was really a moment. I'd argue there's like a huge missed opportunity for some racial and class solidarity here, because like this genre collected black, white, and brown youth from poverty and lumpen pro backgrounds and got them organized and working and connecting together, and then money and general dysfunction ruined it. Like that was probably a missed opportunity. The most significant white rapper to emerge from this time, and in my opinion, the greatest white rapper of all time, LP, also gets his start in the early mid 90s. LP began with Company Flow, an underground group from New York. Underground meant something different back then. Like now I'd argue there is no underground, because you can search and discover an independent artist off TikTok and then find all of their music on Spotify within seconds. But in LP's day, you had to really connect to the culture to find underground artists. They had to print up their own material and sell it out of their trunk or in a barbershop or walking down the street. So LP changed a lot of that. He started Definitive Jux and really collected a lot of underground artists from his area, then developed the sound of what alternative underground hip hop would be for like that entire era and really going forward. But a lot of that happens after Eminem, so he doesn't get as much credit as he should. Most of you only know him as one half of Run the Jewels, but understand his legacy is also worthy of its own video. To be honest, it's artists like LP that make me side-eye this reactionary and, oh God, am I about to say this out loud?
Anti-white.
I get it. I get because of what Eminem did to the art form and the genre, people feel like no white folks had ever touched it again. But understand, while there is definitely a white rapper problem now, that's not just because individual artists themselves initially sought out to mutilate the culture as they have. There would be so much missing from hip hop as we know it today if we remove some of these white artists, just like it would suck to remove Bobby Caldwell or Tina Marie from soul and R&B from their era. Are you trying to go to an old folk set or a cookout and not hear Tina Marie and Bobby Caldwell? Is that the world you want to live in? None of these rappers, even the ones that I love and I think are great, like an LP, can say with honesty that their whiteness didn't work as an exploitative factor in hip hop. The trick about white supremacy is that it functions without intention or consent, and for the most part, its effects are invisible to the naked eye. You don't realize how white supremacy is working on behalf of some of these artists until you sit back and do the math on where they came from and where they ended up, despite maybe a lack of talent. And this is most evident in one of hip-hop's most notorious white figures, before Eminem.
This is the moment hundreds of hysterical fans have been waiting for.
Last year, this man became the first rap artist to hit #1 on the pop singles chart.
This is the man Madonna sends flowers to and who's guaranteed to make any self-respecting teeny bopper go weak at the knees.
The cold, but very hot vanilla ice. The VIP is cold, baby. The VIP is cold, baby. The VIP is cold, baby.
Vanilla Ice was, and to this day is, everything wrong with white participation in non-white art forms. Much like Elvis before him, he was a cheap, corporately backed and manufactured culture vulture who came into the game with the intention to grab as much from it as he could and then denounce it after the fact. Doing that routine I talked about earlier, going from hip hop to heavy metal later in his career, almost as a fuck you to the culture that rightfully rejected him as a poser and a leech. Except, this isn't really an accurate look at Vanilla Ice. In fact, Vanilla Ice is probably one of the first victims of the white rapper paradox. Ice, better known as Robert Van Winkle, was a part-time rapper slash breakdancer slash motocross racer, which is funny as hell but makes sense in retrospect. And he came about these interests honestly in a time before Eminem, in a time where being a white guy in a black space was not as beneficial. Like, I want people to remember, Eminem begins the scourge of the white rapper. So when Vanilla Ice is becoming Vanilla Ice, he doesn't think he could be a megastar in the process. He's legit just trying his hardest to do the thing that he loves doing. He wasn't just plucked out of the scene and given raps to rhyme, as we often imagine, with figures as brazenly noxious as he was. He cut his teeth as a dancer and a rapper, joining a lot of different groups and doing talent shows and even becoming a regular performer at a nightclub. Now, Ice wasn't a great rapper, but he was a great dancer, and that was still very important in hip hop back in the late 80s in the era of MC Hammer, Big Daddy Kane, Kwame, Kid, and playing many others. And it also didn't hurt that he looked like an underwear model. And once combined with the strong record of Ice Ice Baby, he was out of there. It was to the moon. And like in isolation, there's not a lot wrong with that. That should be perfectly fine, but the way whiteness works, shit just always gets messy. The reality is that everything but the rapping took Vanilla Ice to the top. I think early on, he genuinely did have love for the art form and the culture and had dreams about being a rapper. I mean, you can't be a regular performer at a nightclub and not love the art form that you're attached to. But his whiteness had other plans. His whiteness within the world of hip hop, the package that he provided was too valuable a commodity to just let him be slow played into his career. And so he was suddenly one of the biggest stars in hip hop. He legitimately skipped the line from, you know, random white rapper to one of the most notable figures in the game, popping up in movies, magazines, TV shows, and he was just kind of along for the ride and wasn't asking any questions.
People that said a white boy couldn't rap. I guess there are a lot of battles you're experiencing. KRS-One said that you present a distorted mutation of rap. What is that? I'm not sure what that means.
I have no idea what it meant. I read the same article. They also said that, you know, I'm bringing rap music to an audience that has never heard it before as well. So, you know, whether I like it or not, it's bringing rap music up, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm putting it in front of people that never even considered listening to rap music. Yeah. And now they're considering it, and it's bringing rap music up. You know, rap music is here to stay. No matter what color it is, I'm not the Elvis of rap. That's another thing, you know? I'm Vanilla Ice. I'm not no Elvis Pressley, you know?
You know, I know a lot of black rappers are probably angry because some of the white people screaming didn't buy rap until you did it, until they saw a vanilla face on the cover of an album. That probably makes them angry because
if it makes them angry, you know, it's not my fault. Mm-hmm. Did I have anything to do with that?
So
no.
They should dog the people.
What they're saying is they're showing their own jealousy, man. That's all it is.
I don't think he saw anything wrong with it, which is bad for him because when the inevitable backlash hit, he came off defensive and confused, like he didn't know why people were annoyed by his presence. In his mind, he had worked hard and earned that spot, and I get that, but no, that wasn't the case.
What's your real name?
Robert Van Winkle.
Where did you
Nothing rhymes with winkle. I become richer with every endeavor. I'm living large and my bank is stupid, cause I just listen to real rap and stupid.
And understand, his record label and the people around him were not helping. They were trying to get that cash out of him. They overly emphasized his whiteness. They even wrote a fake biography to make it seem like he was more street credible than he was. And real hip hop responded accordingly. This was a different era of hip hop where black culture still had the power to completely dictate who was accepted into hip hop. So once most of hip hop rejected Vanilla Ice and he couldn't come up with another major hit, he was gone. He was out of there, only to emerge later in life again as a heavy metal artist, do a few rock albums, some reality shows, think he had a drug problem at a certain point. You know, it's the usual routine. But I am bothered by the fact that he's looked at as this ultimate culture vulture because unlike similarly branded, oversaturated acts today, he didn't know that was what he was doing. He didn't ask for it. And as I said earlier, the whiteness spoke for him. It propelled him to that position, and he didn't have enough wherewithal, like, you know, most white people, to stop it before it ate him alive. What Vanilla Ice illustrates to us is an important point, which is that there isn't as much money in black music as pop or rock or whatever. And that's simply because there's never going to be as much money marketing something to black people as opposed to any other population of Americans. You just won't sell as many records or tickets or t-shirts, and whatever you do sell will probably end up being less lucrative in the long run. Thus, not long after everyone figured out that white kids loved hip hop the same way their parents loved rock and roll years ago, just like with rock and roll, the corporations and record labels were looking for an artist and person that they could market to that white audience to get the maximum amount of money. That's just the reality of the situation. If you want to be successful at the highest levels of whatever you're doing, whether you're black or white, you're gonna have to get white consumers, whether it be Kanye West with Adidas or Rihanna with Textile, the people that make her clothing line. Speaking of which, well, I got you white folks here, please join the FD Signifier Patreon. You can become a member for just $1. You don't get shit from it, to be honest with you. It's just a way to pay me to keep making videos, y'all, and pay my editors and pay my bills. Go ahead, sign up. The true commercial and economical lifeblood of hip hop and the viability of many of its biggest early breakthrough acts like Run DMC, Tribe Called Quest, Public Enemy, these are GOATs, right? But part of the reason why they're GOATs is they had large white fan bases that kept them in the media eye. White people wanted to see them just as much as black people did, and that is one of the reasons why they're legends, because white ran hip-hop media had the reins on dictating who was popular. This is not to say that those aren't great acts, of course. I mean, Tribe is top tier, but there's a reason why the Ghetto Boys don't have the same level of notoriety. So what this means is that you had to have crossover appeal as a rapper to get to the highest level of popularity and economic success. But even crossover appeal had its limitations because you had to be white friendly like those aforementioned groups or a caricature of real street life like NWA or Ice-T. And even then you still only capture a fraction of the white hip hop fan population. There was this huge untapped market of white people, those white folks that kind of liked good music, but don't really like black people, you know, racist. The hip hop world was searching for its Elvis, someone who was good enough to really perform that black art, but could translate it effectively for a white audience. They had tried it with all these other acts. Some accepted the opportunity, many rejected it, thankfully, and they got close with Vanilla Ice, but he didn't have the talent or the heart to pull it off. But 9 years later, as the oldest millennials began to come of age, such as myself, hip hop found its great white hope, and he was more than happy to tell you who he was.
Waiting on my dog, Eminem. Y'all know Eminem, aka Slim Shady, and it's not.
There's a lot of white people don't got it, and a few do. I don't like to dwell on what color I am. I don't like to sit here and go, oh, I'm white.
Mr. Controversy, Eminem.
Eminem, yes!
I guess, first of all, I want to thank everybody who could look past the controversy or whatever and see the album for what it was, and also for what it isn't.
Eminem is such an interesting topic to me because he's so misunderstood and in some ways misrepresented in popular discourse. But even as he gets all these reactionary hot takes about why he's a problem, which some of what, are accurate, people miss the real problems of Eminem completely. So I'm looking forward to this shit. It's pretty funny to see Gen Z discover and then cancel Eminem every 6 months. But to millennials, Eminem was a cultural touchstone, a canon event. And how he got there and what happened in the aftermath is really complicated, but it's the epitome of the white rapper paradox concept. Eminem, aka Slim Shady, was born one Marshall Mathers in Missouri, actually, before he, his brother, and his mother moved to Detroit, Michigan, where he grew up as one of those few working class white families in an all-black area. If you are a white person from the hood, then you have an immersion experience there, and black culture in that environment is native to you in a way that it isn't for most white people and even many black people. They still exist and experience whiteness, but that experience is from a standpoint that gives them as much of a black experience at the same time that they could get without actually being black. They can have everything but the burden of blackness, though it is still very much a difficult and traumatic experience. One, living in poverty, but also being a token in an all-black area is not easy. To quote one Dave Chappelle,
you'll be walking down the street and you'll see a group of black dudes walking. Not just any old black dudes, we talking, thugs. A group that got 1 or 2, sometimes as many as 3 white guys will be with them. You ever seen this shit? Well, let me tell you something about those white guys. Those white guys are the most dangerous motherfuckers in them groups. Ain't no telling what they've done to get them black dudes respect.
And this, to me, describes Eminem. He had to develop an extreme persona of sorts to survive not just poverty and a toxic home life, but to gain acceptance among a bunch of black kids who naturally are going to be a little bit distrusting of this one random white person in their community. At a certain point, Eminem discovers hip hop, but now we're well into an era where white rappers are a thing. He's had the benefit of seeing Vanilla Ice up close, along with the Beastie Boys in third base, and Eminem knows, unlike most other walks of life, that his skin color is actually kind of going to be a barrier to his goals. Nobody wants another corny white guy trying to be black and trying to rap. And he had to learn this the hard way with his first independent album, Infinite, which sold 5,000 records. Infinite is an interesting and often untold part of Eminem's story, because on Infinite, Eminem sounds a lot like Milkbone. He sounds like a white rapper trying to be a black rapper, being down and trying to fit in.
One day I plan to be a family man, happily married. I want to grow to be so old that I have to be carried till I'm glad to be buried and leave this crazy world and have at least $500,000 for my baby girl.
And this led to general apathy towards him. I listened to this album initially upon discovering Eminem before he became big, and it was alright. I mean, I was into cannabis, so of course I liked it a little bit. You best believe if I was into cannabis, I was into Eminem. And Infinite has some moments, but overall he just sounded like another Lyrical Miracle AZ Nas style rapper. And if AZ couldn't make a big splash in the game with the flow, then you best believe Eminem could. Eminem went back to the drawing board. He knew that being another mediocre white guy was gonna cut it. He couldn't be another Milkbone, who was a person that he actually subtly dissed in one of his earliest breakthrough songs titled I Just Don't Give a Fuck. And that song was a breakthrough for him because unlike the Eminem we met on Infinite, I Just Don't Give a Fuck was a song from Slim Shady.
I just don't give a fuck. I'm nicer than who? But I'm on a thirst to crush a milk bone. I'm everlasting. I melt vanilla ice like silicone. I'm ill enough to just straight up diss you for no reason. I'm cold in the snow season when it's 20 below freezing.
Slim Shady is a chaotic, misogynistic, homophobic, murderous psychopath. Probably developed out of a combination of Eminem's struggles in his personal life. He was dealing with addiction at the time. He was always in conflict with his mother, his baby mother, and living in poverty. But at the same time, he had also connected with his future group D12, who dabbled in horrorcore and extreme edgelord content. So Slim Shady is basically all of those experiences plus Eminem's intrusive thoughts made sentient. He put all of that rage into the music, and this was not new for hip hop. That was the same thing DMX did, Biggie and Pac did, etc., except they were black. And so there was only so much rage that would be accepted by society if it came from a black male voice. There were rules and limitations to that shit. Most of y'all are probably too young to remember all the multiple attempts at horrorcore that happened in hip hop, which were all failures and met with much, much cringe. But for bleach blonde Eminem, the standard was a little different. This was a way for Eminem to overcome the challenge his skin represented. Part of hardcore hip-hop's appeal, even for black fans, was this feeling of pantomiming the unique energy and aesthetic of hip-hop culture to embody that black male entity. And not just being black, but being that nigga. The music gets people going, but that skin color was an ingredient there. The imaginary gangster fantasies don't work when they come from white skin, which is why Vanilla Ice, Milkbone, and others didn't work. It just doesn't look right. But smartly, Eminem didn't even try to do that the second time around. M sought to enter into hip-hop being something different altogether, adjacent to it, but completely different. You don't have to watch Eminem long to notice that he is a jester, a skill he probably learned as a survival tactic, being one of those few white kids in the black space, something that minorities from all walks of life can relate to. It's easier to make yourself into a joke if you think people are going to make fun of you to begin with. But there's also something deeper there, something that maybe wasn't intentional, but was definitely impactful. Writer Carl Russ stated the following in an essay called Eminem, the New White Negro, from the book Everything But the Burden, edited by late cultural critic Greg Tate.
Eminem does not perform the authentic nigga as much as he performs a new white nigga. He maintains his whiteness with a quirky Jerry Lewis-like phrasing and a bright Greek god bleached blonde buzz cut. And the classic hip-hop realism he was initially influenced by when he first studied the style of Naughty by Nature and Nas has been replaced by his own brand of contemporary surrealism that abstracts and exaggerates hip-hop lore more so than any of his authentic heroes or contemporaries dare try.
If that felt like too many big words, again, here's Dave Chappelle.
Those white guys are the most dangerous motherfuckers in them groups.
And here's where it gets complex, maybe even paradoxical, because in reality, this is kind of the right way for Eminem to handle things. Like I said earlier, a lot of people see Eminem as this pioneer of the culture vulture. They look at the level of his success and the diehard fan base and compare that to his very much mid catalog of music and assume that he must have been much like the white rappers that came after him, clearly cynically using their whiteness to access hip-hop fandom without paying any type of respect or support to the culture. They think Eminem started that, but that's not really the case. For the most part, Eminem did everything right. For one, as was just stated, he didn't try to be black. He didn't try that hard to imitate blackness explicitly. He didn't make it seem like he was just like Dr. Dre or Snoop Dogg or any of the figures he ran with. He wanted it to be understood that he was down and accepted in black culture, but that didn't mean he was black. Unlike so many white rappers before them, he didn't say the N-word, and he thought it was weird that people felt like he had the right that he should say it. He also paid pretty effective lip service to all of this conflict in his lyrics, as well as pointing out the double standards involved with his success and fame. His circle has always been full of black people. He did his best to put on D12, his former group, along with others. He gave away beats for free. He even took risks with his white fan base by challenging them politically at times, making the song Mosh, an anti-war, anti-George Bush song in the middle of the 2000s, well before the woke ally point thing was a thing. And this was after they had basically murdered the Dixie Chicks for saying the same thing. It's hard to understand this, and it doesn't make sense like in retrospect. But if you were to make an ally checklist, Eminem probably would have checked all the boxes, which is what makes what happens with him so much more problematic. Eminem, at least consciously, never set out to take advantage of or hurt hip hop. He never set out to be Eminem. He legit stayed in his lane, and I think he deserves more grace for his impact on hip hop, at least from that perspective. But that is the paradox, because even pretty much doing everything white, Eminem's whiteness spoke for him. He may have stayed in his lane, but as soon as he entered the road, the entire structure of the highway buckled under his weight. Like, have you ever been on the road when the president is in town? That is how Eminem stayed in his lane. He probably didn't understand this. I hope he understands it now. Eminem brought white people to hip hop in a way that hadn't been done before, and the impact of that influx of white eyeballs and dollars on the culture is still being felt in very, very deleterious ways. Eminem is the highest selling rapper of all time, more than Pac, more than even Drake, more than Jay, more than Ye, This is because he's white, period. Eminem has 15 Grammy Awards, more than Pharrell, more than Lauryn Hill, more than Outkast. This is because he is white, period. Rock radio, back when radio was a thing, they played Eminem in heavy rotation. They never played any other black rappers the whole entire time that the radio existed. There was hip hop, R&B radio, then there was rock radio, and seldom did the two cross. You didn't hear Nirvana on black radio, and you didn't hear Nas on rock radio, but you heard Eminem on both. This is because he was white. Period. Throughout the early 2000s, there was no bigger rapper than Eminem. And while Eminem does have arguably one truly great album, the Marshall Mathers LP, the rest of his catalog during this time and after was mid at best. Yet, he was everywhere, dominating not just the charts, but the attention economy. In an era that saw the release of Blueprint, Stillmatic, Like Water for Chocolate, Stankonia, Mad Villainy, Fantastic Volume 1, The Fix, etc. Mainstream attention for hip hop stopped in its place on a regular basis to see what Eminem was doing. It was the first instance of the essence and attention economy of hip hop being wrestled from black fans' hands. Now, the black fans and the real hip hop fans were more focused on those better artists, but the rest of the world was not. Eminem had a good 5-6 year run where there was no argument that he was the biggest and best rapper in the game, and this was because he was white, period. To be fair to Eminem, he was always a top tier lyricist and rapper. Nobody's taking this away from him. He was great for a guest verse most of the time, and in between 45 songs about killing his ex or his mother or some shit, there were always a few amazing moments, but his presence in hip-hop did not and still does not match up to his contribution. His music overall wasn't anything special. Now, he wasn't a Vanilla Ice, but he's also no LP either. It was really only when Lil Wayne dropped the Carter that Eminem would kind of finally fall to the wayside and Wayne would take his spot as the biggest rapper in the game, but by then it was too late. The die had been cast and the formula had been released and the dollar signs were calling the industry. Eminem had grew a brand new fan base of all white hip hop fans, and hip hop has never been the same. This is where you start getting, I don't listen to rap much, but I really like Eminem. And it's bad times, y'all, bad times. So this brings us to the white rappers AE after Eminem. And we're in a new reality, and it's the worst one. It doesn't start off that bad. Again, thanks to LP, we get two of the best white rappers of all time. Cage, who was like Eminem from another dimension, even down to the motherhood trauma. His story is pretty wild. And then A$AP Rock, not to be confused with A$AP Rocky. A$AP Rock is just great. He's like, it's hard to describe. Just, I'll throw some tracks in there. You know, hip hop nerds already know. If you want to be a hip hop nerd, you got to listen to some A$AP Rock. That's like a rite of passage. This is all part of like this dope underground blog era of the mid 2000s. The same time we started getting Brother Ali, who's probably the first white conscious rapper. There's this whole wave of nerd rap that happened with folks like Whitey Cracker rapping about his real life history of being a hacker as if he was a black rapper writing about being a drug dealer. The GOAT of nerd rap is probably MC Chris, who legit made some pretty interesting tracks in the mid 2000s.
Nico Case, MF Doom, and T-Pain. I play a gummy bear. Go check that out. This next song's about Star Trek.
If you're a millennial, you probably will remember him from some appearances on Adult Swim. He also probably, again, one of these major firsts, brought us Donald Glover. Like the first time you ever heard Childish Gambino rap was on an MC Chris song.
It's Childish Gambino, ho. What you know about that? Niggas afraid to go outside, they some house cats.
We even start to get white rappers from down south like Yellow Wolf, Bubba Sparks, and the most beloved white rapper of all time, Paul Wall. If you just look at white rappers to emerge from this era, right after Eminem, like immediately during and after him, you might think that he had an overall positive influence. John Cena rap album aside, of course. And this is because Eminem convinced labels to try to find their next Eminem, and they were putting more effort in to find them in that immediate aftermath, and they were finding a few gems. And it worked early on because all of these rappers at this time were from the same era as Eminem. So they grew up watching the Cool G Raps and Rakims and, you know, all these other black rappers. Their view on music was still steeped in that black-oriented aesthetic. They were just like Bobby Caldwell, Tina Marie, Dusty Springfield, etc. We don't get to the real fuck shit until we get to the era that is influenced explicitly by Eminem. Shit doesn't get really bad until we get to the 2010s.
Hey, look, I like to play it cool like I'm not that. On the low, who'd assume that I got that?
What do we expect from you now? Great coming up. I hope to make a monumental change, man.
Hit 'em quicker than the edible. I'm about to run for Senate, ho. You don't even Senate.
What are you doing for the Black Lives Matter movement?
I mean, look, first off, I think it's ridiculous that we live in a society where like people aren't able to like treat everybody equally. Like, I don't understand how, like, that being said, I'm not doing much. Like, I'm not a very cause-based person. Like, I'm not doing anything for like world hunger either. Not that they're the same thing, but I don't even know what I should be doing, to be honest.
That's a very honest answer.
Yeah. Stupendo. Everybody know the cat like a dope meme. I got him buzzing up the crack like a dope fiend.
So, G-Eazy, I don't even know where to start with you because you have been on the grind and working since like day dot. Yeah. I mean, so watching you grow into the artist that you 100% deserve to be is amazing.
Hotel got him puffing on the L, going harder than some hell, you ain't knew it. If everybody had to tell the truth and you had to pick a dude spitting better than you do, can't do it. Sway.
And the Grammy goes to Macklemore and Ryan Lewis.
The 2010s gives us rappers that were only influenced by Eminem, essentially, but also exist in a hip-hop landscape where far fewer barriers to entry exist due to technology. Same things I talked about in the Drake video. And this isn't so bad because Eminem also influenced some great black artists that we have today, like Earl Sweatshirt and Tyler, the Creator. When they first came with the whole Odd Future Collective, boy, if y'all gonna try to cancel Eminem, please do not listen to some of the early Tyler, the Creator stuff. At the same time, it also starts the era of really cringe shit like Hopsin and Joyner Lucas. And yeah, it changes fundamentally the reality of not just like how hip hop exists, but where it exists. Before, to be a rapper and to experience hip hop as we understood it, you had to be in community with black people. You couldn't even be a white rapper not surrounded and accepted by black spaces. But in this era, we get the resurgence of frat boy rappers. People like Asher Roth literally started their career with a song called I Love College. Guys like G-Eazy, Lil Dicky, Macklemore, etc. all break out in the late 2000s, early 2010s with real, genuine white people rap music. Some of this stuff is good. Lil Dicky can spit a little bit, but these are people who self-admittedly have not grown up connected to black culture at all. And their favorite rappers growing up were Eminem or maybe Drake. And it shows. On a technical rhyming level, they're talented and skilled as lyricists, some of them. But they make this vapid, toothless, shallow music and lacked the life experience and trauma of an Eminem to give them something to talk about that was somewhat interesting. Instead, they just talk about college and partying and how small their penises were. It was really, really cringe. But all of these guys became successful on some level, and worse yet, were given entry into respected hip-hop spaces. Lil Dicky popped up on the Breakfast Club and does freestyles with Funkmaster Flex or Sway.
Breakfast Club, we got a special guest in the building.
Dave.
Lil Dicky.
He keeps introducing himself as Dave,
He did introduce himself as Dave, but his rap name is Lil Dicky.
And Macklemore wins a Grammy, famously sending him that apology text where he just so happens to share that text with the entire world on Instagram. Eminem helped create the new white Negro, and next thing you know, you have Post Malone calling himself White Iverson, and then a year later saying hip hop is boring. I'm gonna do something different. I want some real music. I can't call what the fuck Tom McDonald is. Thankfully, I've never listened to a Tom McDonald song. Guys like Tekashi 6ix9ine pop up, and he's technically not white, but boy, does his existence feel really, really white. We see today the aftermath of what Eminem did, technically by accident. The total adoption of black aesthetics and slang and signifiers into white culture. Ebonics, which is what it was called once upon a time, aka African American Vernacular English, is now Gen Z speak. White girls have a hot Cheeto phase before graduating into appropriate white femininity. And all these young white influencers are doing TikTok dances for likes that they usually steal from black people, but then go silent when it's time to actually speak up about the culture they voraciously partake in. Eminem, much like Elvis before him, managed to separate the music from the people and reframe it and recreate it in the image of that white audience. And this allows that white audience to avoid the cognitive dissonance of loving black music, but not really liking black people. They get to enjoy all of our shit without giving us not just credit, but humanity half the time. And when I look at this modern landscape of white people, not just white rappers, but like white folks involved in black cultural aesthetics and art, and I think to myself, where the fuck did Marlon Craft come from? According to what I could find, Marlon Craft's background isn't any more street than his white contemporaries. His parents are both high-end professionals. He grew up near Manhattan in New York, which is not cheap. He does have direct connections to black spaces, having played AAU basketball in the South Bronx. But if anything, I'd imagine that'd give him maybe an inflated sense of connection where he would act more brazenly stupid about the fact that he knows black people in his music. But instead, he's got bars like,
as well. Trains of thought out of order, we lost the way to ourselves. Take a good look at you like what DNA you got locked away in your cells. Slave owners is doing life in your bloodstream. How you gonna come clean? You ain't seeing the dirt up under your nails.
Excuse me? Sir, where is this with your contemporaries, Marlon? Why are we not hearing this from other white rappers? Tom McDonald would never. This is why nobody's probably heard of you, by the way. You might, I don't know, for your own good, you might want to sell out or sell in, cash in, whatever. Anyway, it seems like Marlon Craft has a desire to uphold an era of hip-hop that everyone else has forgotten and left behind. And in that, he's actively trying to defy the unyielding pull of white commercial viability that is probably gnawing at his heels. And even this is nothing new, to be honest. Today, if you go into any jazz or blues club in the United States, you're probably going to see a bunch of white guys on stage playing Miles Davis or maybe even Jay Dilla. And this is all nice. And I wish I could be 100% a fan of Marlon Craft, because you have your Eminem, and Eminem has baggage in all these different forms and fashions that Marlon Craft doesn't have, and you recognize that this person is trying to do their best to respect the art form, and in Marlon Craft's case, trying not to take up a lot of extra space. But as soon as he does, things start getting a little problematic. The paradox is that no matter how much a white rapper tries to be respectful and tries not to be harmful, the forces of capitalism and commerce and economics and these industries and these corporations, they're going to use whiteness and that person as a spear to penetrate every other aspect of the culture. And even as they're just minding their business and trying to make art, the harm will follow them regardless of how hard they try to avoid it.
The world is so small till it ain't. I was just like a kid making music, and all of a sudden I was everywhere. She hated when I call, and it's late.
You kind of started in the beginning of the blog era. Like, this was sort of the beginning of that era.
Which is fucking nuts, man. I've seen eras. I'm a young dude.
I know it all, but I don't. He never hesitated to extend his hand to the people he loved, and was responsible for putting on so many artists.
Ladies and gentlemen, Arms. Y'all know who I am. Yes, sir.
To some, Mac Miller is one of their GOATs, or at least one of the GOATs of his era. And I don't see it. Don't get me wrong, I've tried. And just to be clear, I'm also old. Always remember that. When Mac Miller was at his peak, I was beginning my journey into fatherhood and graduating out of hardcore hip-hop fandom. I wasn't there in the musty basements of hip-hop message boards when he arrived in the mid-2010s. So it's possible I just missed the moment, but I don't think so, because there's artists from that era that I love today, and he's just not one of them. To give Miller his props, he saw the play when he entered into the rap game. He recognized that, the corporations and the industry had this severe thirst for the next white rap megastar, and that that they would use him and thrust him to the forefront of the rap game if he allowed them to. It would do him like they're doing Jack Harlow right now, which is, you know, Jack Harlow's not smart enough to recognize what's happening to him. So Mac Miller, like Asher Roth and other guys before him, said, you know what? I'm gonna actually chill in the background and make good music that inspires me, yada, yada, yada. And so as soon as Mac Miller really started getting to the top of the food chain, he switched up his music to become more eclectic and challenging in its sound and scope. I can't remember where I got this from, but someone, correct me in the comments, there was like an interview where I think it was Snoop Dogg told him that Mac Miller had this conversation with him and asked him how he could respect the culture and respect hip hop. And Snoop told him that if he wanted to be taken seriously, he'd have to drop all that frat boy stuff and challenge himself and the genre as a whole. And he did that to great success. Miller was beloved and respected in hip hop in a way that I don't think any other white rapper had been or has been since him. Miller also remained independent for a large chunk of his career, and even when he signed, it was after that transition into being a more eclectic artist. He never really fully took advantage of his whiteness to the level he probably could have. And unlike Eminem, he doesn't have all the baggage of having his music be so hyper-violent and misogynistic and homophobic, etc. So he's not performing the new white nigga as Eminem did. So Eminem did almost everything right, and Mac Miller seemingly did do everything right. So then obviously the question is, what's the problem? How could I be complaining about Mac Miller if he did everything that he could have to respect the craft and the art form and the culture, and then tragically died before he could have the full impact on the music that he maybe could have had? Well, the thing is, I'm not really criticizing Mac Miller, the individual. What I'm wanting us to be critical of is the legacy. Specifically, how did he get into any type of GOAT conversation status, even just among his contemporaries? So y'all know battle rap is one of my favorite things. I leave a lot of references to it in my content. One day they'll get us on video, etc., etc., etc. So there's this classic battle between Murder Mook and Iron Solomon from Summer Madness 2. Summer Madness is like WrestleMania for battle rap. And this battle is kind of a dud, and the reason why it's kind of a dud, even though it has these two legendary figures, is because it was incredibly one-sided. It was supposed to be this huge thing because Murder Mook was this legend that had just came out of hiatus, and Solomon was this very, at the time, hot white battle rapper that was building a buzz, that had a few notable battles and was constantly calling Mook out. And this didn't go well for him. If you've only ever seen battle rap from like epic rap battles of history or 8 Mile, then you know enough to know that battle rap is about attacking your opponent in whatever way possible, along with controlling the crowd and generally being a great showman. And Mook was good at all of those things, but his best feature was being a master at analyzing and breaking down his opponents and then turning the crowd against them based on that argument and breakdown.
Face. All right, take your best shot. But you know, after you try it, it's gonna be a riot. A lot of your niggas dying. So avoid y'all running out of here, calling for help. Tuck that pride away, tough guy. Keep that thought to yourself. There's too many of us.
If I can give any opponent to Murder Mook a piece of advice, it's never let Mook go first. Because by the time you get the mic back, it may not be possible to get the crowd back. And that's what he did to Iron Solomon. White battle rappers are nothing new. In fact, there's probably more respected white battle rappers than white rappers in general. But a lot of them very much play into the fact that they're white in kind of the most cringe way possible. But not Iron Solomon. Iron Solomon had just enough charisma and gravitas that he could be taken seriously and not have to play into the LOL I'm so white bars, and he did that. He rapped with conviction and bravado like every other black rapper, and that was relatively rare in battle rap.
I'ma make smack wanna smack you literally. You got garbage punchlines and plastic similes. I recycled your rhymes to trash you lyrically. Cause back in high school, I smashed this chickadee. To cut, she cut science class to visit me. We had the chemistry, attracted physically, taught her sex ed and woodshop. Now math is history.
And it usually worked well for him, but not against Mook, who immediately pointed out the difference between him and Iron Solomon in his first verse.
I didn't come here to talk a whole lot of popping tools and how many guns I'ma use. Solomon, I came here to strip every piece of integrity out of you and break you down to your last molecule.
Mook puts on display the white rapper paradox, the fact that white rappers are allowed to come and partake of the culture and eat some of the biggest meals at the table, despite one, not always having to put in the level of work or having the credibility to do so, and two, not being quite as sharp as their black counterparts, yet still being seen as the same level as them.
Hey, this nigga had some nerve to say that this was Jordan versus Bird. You fucking kidding me? Nigga, this is practice. This is Jordan versus Kerr. And since you on my team, here's how I'ma have to do you. Spot your ass up in the corner and wait till I pass it to you.
Mook returns to this line of argumentation multiple times throughout the battle. But in the third, he delivers a concise thesis that explains why Mac Miller never did a lot for me as an artist.
See, it was his image that got him over. Because he was a corny looking white boy. So when he rapped and he added a little black swag, we'd give him more credit, because shit, for a white guy, he wasn't half bad.
Because some of the white people screaming didn't buy rap until you did it, until they saw a vanilla face on the cover of an album. That probably makes them angry because
If it makes them angry, you're angry, it's not my fault. Did I have anything to do with that?
So
no.
But it's like the white guy that just get on the court. Immediately, what you do? You write him off like, shit, damn. Fuck, ain't nobody else sitting up in them stands? Well, fuck it, we gotta pick him. We only got 9, he the 10th man.
I mean, what more can I say to that than a lot of white people don't got it, and a few do. I mean.
So after like, what, 40 possessions, they finally pass it to him like, let's see how he do. Niggas ain't expecting much. They like, all right, at best, he probably could shoot. What your nigga do? He start guarding him, taunting him, like, hey, white boy, show me how you hoop. He fake a show, do the give and go, catch the alley-oop. We like, ooh, white boy got game.
I am white. I'm sure. I mean, yeah, it probably could have helped. But maybe it did. You know, I was just talking to somebody on Twitter today who told me that that was the reason that I was here.
See, it's a shame. Let me explain how this story and his story are one and the same. And how the color of his skin could dictate the amount of credit he get. Because the very next play, a black nigga caught that same alley-oop, but it was just regular shit.
Mac Miller is good, but if Mac Miller was black, it would just be regular shit. As good as Mac Miller is, and was, what makes him great is the fact that A, black fans hadn't ever seen a white person make this type of music before, and B, a lot of white fans had never heard this type of hip hop pretty much at all. As much as I like a lot of Mac Miller's music, it's nothing, absolutely nothing that I didn't hear 20 years ago from Common on Resurrection, or in the lyrical humor and wordplay realm from Big L or Big Pun, or in those jazzy influences. You could see that in the Soul Currians era. Or if you want contemporary comparison, Anderson .Paak, maybe even J. Cole. Like, two of Mac Miller's most lauded albums, from what I could tell, Divine Feminine and Swimming Pool, came out in like 2016 and 2018. And these are these earthy, jazzy departures from what he's known for. And he's singing and being more sentimental and more sensitive and reflective. And it was great because it propelled Miller from being just another white rapper to being a serious artiste in his music. But between both of those albums, J. Cole dropped my favorite album of his, For Your Eyes Only. And sonically and thematically, they're pretty similar. But for Cole, this album is considered a low point for him. Even though he's doing pretty much the same thing as Miller, and I would argue doing it better, it's an album that nobody ever talks about as something special from J. Cole. And this is because when J. Cole did it, we were comparing it to other versions of the same shit by other black artists. But when Mac Miller did it, it was the first time anything like that had ever happened. You kind of see the uncomfortable thing I'm pointing out here. Mac Miller was a really good rapper, a great one by white standards, but that's the thing. A great rapper by white standards paradoxically becomes an all-time great by industry and cultural standards, because whiteness is like a special buff for everything they do. I want to be clear, I don't say this to disrespect such a beloved figure or to take away from the quality of his catalog or the people he left behind whom were inspired and affected by his art. I think hip hop will be better off with way more Mac Millers and way less Jack Harlows. But it doesn't make the white rapper paradox any less of a reality or a problem, no matter how much effort is being put into the culture. No matter how much genuine talent is present in these white artists, no matter how hard they try to not exploit their whiteness and cede space to black artists like any real ally should, in this commercial venture under capitalism, their whiteness will always be the most important and valuable aspect of their art. And if they're really successful and allow themselves to pursue megastardom, something that thankfully no white rapper has done until Jack Harlow, then they end up making that problem worse through their success. And that sucks. To be empathetic, it legit sucks for them. I don't want to take the love of art away from anyone. It has to be hard to feel like your work in art is tokenized and that people aren't hearing what you're actually saying and instead only see your skin color, missing so much of what you might have to offer. I can't imagine what that feels like. And if I read between the lines, I think a lot of white rappers acknowledge that they're carrying this burden. This is the reality of all art under the control of commerce and capitalism and thus white supremacy. This is the reality of white culture or lack thereof, just like with rock and roll 50 years ago. There is an unyielding, homogenous thirst of whiteness to drain other vibrant cultural and artistic movements into their own void, to fill that vacuous space that was created just to make white what it has to be in this country for this country to function. European or Caucasian or whatever people are trapped and caged by whiteness, yet they can't even see it, but they feel it. And I know that they feel it because that's the feeling that they're trying to escape when they listen to hip hop. They're trying to fill that void. So I don't blame any white person deluded by the flavorless and banal art that comes out of white supremacy, wanting to find something better. It makes perfect sense to me, though maybe dismantling white supremacy might be a, better overall option. You'd be doing both of us a favor, just putting that out there. But I'm gonna be honest, all that said, I don't care. I don't care much either way, because hip hop as we know it, at least as the commercial juggernaut that I grew up with, is dying anyway. All over music news, we hear the most popular rap artists are failing to get streams and sell records or selling tickets to their shows. Even Jack Harlow, with the clear industry backing that he has not had much of an impact. And the most interesting and innovative black music is ironically starting to look a lot more like punk and rock and roll. The byproduct of algorithms and the internet means that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are coming up in an era where they get to choose their media influences at least a bit, and they're not as interested in the death and destruction that hip hop gave my generation. My kids, low-key, don't even like rap. I've tried really hard to get them into hip hop, and my boys half the time are like, why are they cursing so much? And why are they talking about women like that? What am I supposed to say to that? Out the mouth of babes. There's not a lot. I can't shit, but that's all fine with me, because even at the height of Eminem and the current wave of Jack Harlow, there's still good rap music being made. They may not be selling out arenas, but you can still find the Griselda people. Dreamville has a cast of stars and amazing artists on its roster. I can enjoy a ratchet anthem from the City Girls and get something more thoughtful maybe from Rhapsody, and on a long ride I can toss in some Marlon Craft as well. I'm not pressed about Lil Mabu making songs with Christian Rock. Who really cares about all of that? Like, for real. So you're not going to fix rap by eliminating white people from the hip hop sphere. Like, not only will that not work, it doesn't serve the art. Like, would hip hop be better today without Eminem? Maybe. I doubt it, but it's plausible. But would it be better without LP? Definitely not. Hell, I don't want to live in a world without epic rap battles of history. I want to see George Washington battle dude from Braveheart rapping over a Houston-style bounce beat flowing like the Migos. I want that shit.
I got my face on a quarter. You got drawn and quarter. Tortured on the orders of a king. Really? How's it hit beef I do?
At the end of the day, to quote one of my favorite YouTubers, I'm on the side of good art. And there's countless examples of this in hip hop from white artists. And I don't see the point, especially now in hip hop's dying flails, of being hyper vigilant about it. Because if all the white rappers magically disappeared, the core problem, white supremacist capitalism, would still remain. We just have less hip hop. And like, to keep it a buck, the energy some of y'all spend pouting about Jack Harlow would be better spent sharing a favorite song from an artist that you actually love. The algorithms are owned by these corporations, but they've kind of given all their power to the algorithms, so you can affect that by your behavior on these platforms. If you're on Twitter or TikTok or wherever, and you keep on saying over and over again, I hate insert person here, understand that every comment you make about a Jack Harlow or Eminem or whomever else, just makes them stronger, even if you're saying something negative. So maybe don't say anything at all and spend more time talking about Kenny Mason. Can I get some Kenny Mason love in the streets? I do not see it. Angelic Hood Rat 2 is still probably one of my favorite albums from the last 4 or 5 years, and I never hear anyone talk about it. At the end of the day, I don't have a prescriptive suggestion on what to do with hip hop and white people in it. I don't have a prescriptive suggestion for how fans should respond to your Lil Mabus and your Tom McDonalds, but I suggest that if you love hip hop, you should be spending more time on the love of the art form than the parts of it that you hate. If you want the love of the art form to be the thing that's still here when the dust settles. That's pretty much all I got on this one. Please make sure to check out the Patreon and support me on Patreon. Patreon is paying for, shout out to Oscar who is editing this video. Patreon helps cover the fact that, I can make bigger and better videos with longer gaps in between so they can be a little bit better produced. Please check out the side channel, Signify B-Sides, where I do more frivolous and lighter stuff. Please support this video's sponsor. That sponsorship money goes a long way. And yeah, that's all I got for today, y'all. Peace.
Here comes a new challenger.
This video is sponsored by Ground News. So the shirt I'm wearing in this video is a tribute to probably the most universally loved white rapper of all time and local Houston legend, Paul Wall. But I wanted to ask if you were aware of the fact that another Houston legend, the incomparable Bun B, formerly of the iconic Houston hip-hop duo UGK, owns a restaurant in the Houston area called Trill Burgers. And this isn't some quick venture to make money off his legacy and image. No, this burger spot was named the best burger in America by Good Morning America last summer. So unless you're from the Houston area, you may not have heard this, but if you are a person that constantly consumes news from right-wing or conservative sites, then you almost definitely didn't hear about this. Conversely, if you're more left-leaning, you may not have heard this story about LeBron James sitting down during the national anthem during a basketball game last week. Now, these aren't the most hard-hitting or important news stories in the world, but there is something to the fact that we now live in a media world that is driven by algorithms, aka computer programs that decide what you see before you see it, and how not getting the full picture of what's happening in our world contributes to a lot of issues, misinformation, and the growth in biases. This is the core reason why I'm always happy to talk about today's sponsor, Ground News. If you watch me, then you know my politics. I do not hide them, but that doesn't mean I don't try to stay aware of what's going on in other political ideologies. And that's harder and harder to do because something as universal as Google is actually trained to predict what you want to see based on algorithms built from your own search history. So even if I wanted to know what news is being fed to people from a more conservative pipeline, I still wouldn't be able to get an accurate picture because it'd be filtered through my algorithm. But that isn't the case with Ground News. Not only do they provide all the news aggregated from countless sites across the internet, they provide objective ratings on how these sources tend to lean in their reporting, and they give you a rating on how much circulation a story has had in a given political lane. To go even further, Ground News is a feature called Blind Spot, where it purposefully finds stories that have the most polarization, stories like the ones I mentioned earlier that are almost completely being missed by one end of the political spectrum or another. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what they do. For example, take that LeBron James story. You might think that LeBron pulled a Colin Kaepernick and is doing some type of protest for the national anthem, but no. The reality is that LeBron just happened to walk into his son's basketball game at USC while the national anthem was playing and didn't take off his hat and sat down. And the way that story is presented can greatly change the way you react to it. This is the type of thing that media bias tends to do and why Ground News is so valuable. Subscribe to Ground News using my link ground.news/FDSignifier to take advantage of their holiday sale. It's their best deal of the year. You'll get 40% unlimited access to their app, website, and newsletter for just $5 a month. So sign up today and help support an independent platform working to make the media landscape more transparent. Thank you so much to Ground News for sponsoring the video, and now back to the video.